La cárcel de Tacumbú se llama uno de los episodios de la serie de televisión que se emite a través de Netflix que se llama Inside the World's Toughest Prison. En este sentido, Raphael Rowe es un periodista británico quien, por cierto, quedó preso por 12 años, quedó en prisión por un delito que no cometió. Él emprendió este viaje recorriendo diferentes cárceles, por ejemplo, estuvo por Costa Rica, que es el primer capítulo de la primera temporada, va ya hasta la tercera y ayer se estuvo estrenando la cuarta temporada con el episodio de la cárcel de Tacumbú, donde llega a nuestro país y va, y de hecho que el formato de la serie es quedarse y vivir dentro de la cárcel por un periodo de 6 días, convivir con los reclusos de la penitenciaría de Tacumbú y va viendo el día a día, va viendo cómo están lidiando con sus vidas allí los reclusos, algunos de ellos que no tienen, por cierto, una condena fijada. En este sentido hablamos con Raphael Rowe, el conductor de esta serie de televisión, de esta serie documental, que nos contaba los detalles acerca de los inicios, de por qué y qué le incentivó a llevar a cabo este proyecto, que contaba que, por cierto, Netflix le buscó. También lo que vio aquí en Paraguay dentro de la cárcel de Tacumbú, decía que él quedó totalmente choqueado, los peligros en los que se embarca justamente por realizar este tipo de proyectos y mucho más. Aquí le presentamos la entrevista porque tuvimos una exclusiva con Raphael Rowe acerca de la cárcel de Tacumbú.
Hello, Raphael. I'm Mako from Unicanal, and thanks for this interview.
Thank you very much for inviting me to talk with you today. It's an interesting one, isn't it? This whole journey, and I appreciate the interest that Paraguay and the people of Paraguay have shown to the program that I've made.
Yes, about the program, the TV series Inside the World's Toughest Prison. What can you tell us about the beginnings for this TV series?
Well, it's a program where the Paraguayan authorities were very open to the idea when we approached them about coming into Paraguay and gaining access to their prison. In fact, the director of the prison had been newly appointed and he'd already watched previous episodes of the show. So when we approached and asked if he would give us access to Tacumbú, he was more than open. In fact, he was quite excited by the idea that we had taken an interest in that particular prison. We didn't choose that prison for any other reason than it is a maximum security prison, and the government and the prison director were open to allowing me to go in there to film my documentary.
Mm-hmm. And how did you learn about Paraguay and Tacumbú specifically?
Well, I mean, we approach different prisons in different countries all over the world. And I'd already been to places like Costa Rica, I'd been to Colombia, and focusing on South American prisons has been a focus of part of the program. Paraguay is just one of a list of prisons that we approached, and we were very successful in gaining access. But it's also about showing people, as much as I possibly can, different prisons from around the world. And Paraguay and Tacumbú is very different from anywhere I've been before.
Mm-hmm. And about the TV series, what inspired you to make it, and were you influenced by something in your past?
I was approached by Netflix initially to become the host of the show because they wanted to access prisons around the world. And I myself had spent 12 years in British maximum security prisons for a murder and a series of robberies that I did not commit. I was sentenced to life imprisonment, but after 12 years, my convictions were overturned when they discovered my innocence and I was released. Since then, I've worked as a journalist, and a lot of the work that I do is around social issues, and it focuses sometimes on prisons and criminal justice. So when Netflix approached me and asked me if I would host this series where I travel the world and look at the security and rehabilitation issues in different prisons, it wasn't an easy decision to make because I spent so long trying to get out of prison. So to go back willingly was a tough decision. But I think it's important. It's important that not only people of these countries find out more about what goes on behind these closed doors, but I also think it's an opportunity for the victims to understand why perpetrators commit the crimes they do, and whether it can be a lesson learned to prevent further victims.
Yes. And about that, how was your experience in the prison during the film?
Takambu is like no other prison in the world that I've been to. I mean, the conditions were shocking. I have to be honest. Now, this is not a reflection on the country, but it is desperately in need of resources. It has very little in terms of the resources it provides for the prisoners in terms of accommodation. I mean, we have a prison here in Takambu where there are 35 to 40 prison guards guarding thousands of inmates, and in the prison there is very few spaces for prisoners to be held, and so I found hundreds of prisoners were sleeping outside on the floor. They were using drugs openly, carrying weapons like knives openly. And although there was an entrepreneurship going on where prisoners run their own shops, I was shocked by what I witnessed on a day-to-day basis. It was very sad to see. There were occasions where I talked to particular prisoners and their stories were very sad to listen to.
I can imagine that. How was the working with the prisoner, because you lived with them in the prison?
I did. The format of the program is that from the moment I arrive at the prison in the prison van or the police escort, I become a prisoner. So I spend 7 days as a prisoner with the prisoners, living under the same conditions and living in the same way that they do. The prisons and the prisoners were very welcoming. I mean, they were very open to talking to me. They were very open to showing me how their lives are. They were very candid in describing to me the dangers of the prison and why there were issues, and mainly it centered around the drug use. But there was also some redemption. There was also some hope among some of those prisoners who really wanted to change their lives. The Panther, for example, Richard Moray, who is the South American boxing champion, he was in prison at the time, and he put on a fight where he won the South American boxing championship, and it was an honor to be inside Takambu when that fight took place. He beat a Brazilian champion. And so the prison do where they can assist and help prisoners, but I spent 7 days with these prisoners, and they showed me what life is really like inside Takambu. I met Pablo. He was very cautious when I first met him, and he shared with me that he carries out the job of tattooing other prisoners. And he allowed me into his space where he carries out his tattoos. In fact, he gave me his tattoo gun and allowed me to tattoo a prisoner. It was quite a scary moment, because if I got it wrong, this guy would be scarred by my drawing for life. But the conditions that he works in was horrible. And he was very open, very honest about the crime that he committed. He shot dead his father, and he explained how that came about and what happened in that case. And I know it is a case that was a high-profile case in Paraguay at the time. He's serving life. In fact, there was an incident when I was interviewing him. We were playing pool, and during the game, another prisoner covered in blood around his face approached the pool table, and he picked up some of the snooker balls and he threw them at me and my crew's head. Luckily, none of us were injured, but it was a reminder that even when the prisoners are being open and they're being welcoming, there is always a moment where danger exists, and it is such an unpredictable place.
In your opinion, Rafael, which is the toughest prison among the ones you have been to?
That's not an easy question to answer, because I think all prisons are tough for different reasons. It's tough to rehabilitate an individual who doesn't want to be rehabilitated. If they are, set on their criminal ways, or the only way of earning a living is to commit crime or traffic drugs or sell drugs, it's very difficult to persuade that individual to give up that mindset. And so even in some of the best prisons, like the Scandinavian prison I went to in Norway, where they have a very low recidivism rate, challenging the mindset and rehabilitating an individual is tough. As it is, trying to rehabilitate the Paraguayan prisoners in conditions that are appalling, and they have no facilities or resources to rehabilitate those individuals. Again, in Brazil, where the extreme violence that prisoners use against each other suggests that that is one of the toughest prisons I've ever been to. But my answer is, to be honest, and it is that all of these prisons are designed to take away the liberty of individuals. And for any individual, whatever their mindset, that is a very, very tough situation to cope with.
And about you already said about the danger. Have you ever been in danger making this type of documentary?
Well, as I said a moment ago, when I was in Takambu, me and my crew were attacked by a particular prisoner. In this season's, I go to Lesotho in the mountainous region of South Africa. It's not South Africa, it's a landlocked country. And I spend 7 days inside Lesotho, and I was threatened and chased by prisoners in that prison. Luckily, I was able to turn that situation around and build the trust with prisoners. In Colombia, I was threatened by prisoners when I was to stay in their cell. They threatened to stab me if I didn't pay them. So there's always a threat. Luckily for me, it's only been in Takambu where I've actually been physically attacked. In Costa Rica, I was filming in one block and a prisoner was killed in another block. So danger is only always a moment away in all of these prisons.
In terms of the following chapters, what can we expect?
Well, all the prisons are different, and in this season I go to different prisons and take on the challenges that each of these prisons show. I think every prison is different, every culture is different, and the challenges that the guards have to keep the prisoners in prison, to maintain order and control, is a very challenging one, and you find it's different in every place. In Mauritius, one of the most exotic island countries in the world, they run their prison with an iron fist. You know, the prisoners, unlike in Paraguay, they are terrified of the authorities. They ban smoking, they don't allow prisoners to integrate very much, and they punish any misdemeanor with severeness. They watch prisoners 24 hours a day through CCTV footage, you know, so they're constantly monitoring these prisons. So every prison in all of the seasons offers something different about the way these different countries and their cultures control their prisoners.
And finally, Rafael, could you greet people in Paraguay and invite them to see La Cárcel de Tacumbú chapter?
I would like people in Paraguay to watch my film Netflix, Inside Takambu, because I think it's important that people see how their fellow countrymen are treated by the criminal justice system, and then they themselves can make a decision about whether it's right or wrong. And I find that most people that have engaged so far are unaware of this show and other episodes, are very surprised by what they see. So I hope people will tune into the program. And please, if there are any questions, if there are any things you want to ask me about the show or the people that were in the show or the work that I did in the prison or my time in the country, please don't hesitate to contact me via social media.
How can I find you in the social media, the TV program?
You can contact me by going to my website, which is rafael.roat.com, or you can contact me via Instagram or Twitter on A Reporter. It's very simple. Or just put my name into your search engine and something will pop up with my details. And don't hesitate to direct message me or contact me, and I will try to get back to you personally.
Thank you very much for your time, Rafael. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's really nice to meet you.
Y les recuerdo que este capítulo ya está disponible en Netflix, ya se estrenó el día de ayer, entonces ya lo pueden ver. Con esto vamos a una breve pausa, pero enseguida seguimos con más.